here interviewing Ben Mattis, who's a senior producer on Batman Arkham Origins. Hi Ben, how you doing?
Great, thanks. Thanks for being here.
No problem at all. Just a few quick questions. First question, you obviously stepped up after Rocksteady, who worked on Arkham Asylum, Arkham City. How did you take that task upon? Because it must have been obviously a huge task.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how we took it upon ourselves was to identify the pillars of the game that, or of the franchise, that are pillars for a reason, that don't need to be reinvented and instead are ripe for iterating on and adding new content, but not sort of fundamentally changing the formula. Pairing that up with some areas where we sort of over-indexed or invested in kind of moving the needle, as it were, to try and bring fundamentally new experiences in terms of like the detective experience and that sort of thing. And then across all of it, making sure that we were telling a story that was meaningful, that was important, that was memorable, that had key iconic characters encountering each other in sort of memorable ways, and trying to create an early career Batman story that will really sort of stand the test of time and hopefully be remembered as a sort of must experience early career Batman story. And so by focusing on areas where we did have an opportunity to do something new because of our experience, because we're the third game in the franchise, because we're in early career space, to create something that sort of stands out and is worthy of its position in this hallowed ground, this Arkham franchise being obviously one of the highest rated franchises, in gaming history.
So you mentioned there that Arkham City featured quite a few villains, and there's going to be obviously quite a few in here as well. Arkham City got the blend pretty much spot on. How have you worked to make sure that's sort of similar in Arkham Origins?
In terms of the number of enemies that you face in particular? Yeah. Interesting. I guess our model from the beginning was to try and have lots of enemies, lots of characters, because some of the most memorable Batman stories often involve lots of sort of characters combining in interesting and exciting ways to create challenges for him. But also to have a very sort of personal story. We liked that really sort of personal story of Arkham Asylum. It kind of really felt like it was about him and individual characters and villains and sort of their relationship. Arkham City sort of started to feel bigger in some ways, and not to take anything away from that story, but it was less personal about the character for us. I would argue, I'm not only, the viewers can tell us if we've succeeded, but what we attempted to try and do was create a sort of very personal, important, memorable story, similar in some ways to what was created in Arkham Asylum, but put it in a world that's open and filled with opportunities for exploration and character encounters and enemy encounters, as was sort of created in the world of Arkham City, and try and get the best of both worlds.
I'm a huge Batman fan myself. Just for the viewers and for myself as well. Obviously, you've got the whole story with the Black Mask and Christmas Eve and putting a 50 million bounty on the Batman. What were your inspirations in terms of? Did you look at the movies, or did you look at any particular graphic novels or comics in the past?
The actual premise didn't come from any particular source. I mean, the actual premise of Black Mask and Assassins came from a brainstorming session where we were trying to think of a kind of world-changing event for Batman, some significant pressure that we could put him through that felt like it could realistically play out over a 24-hour period, because the Arkham games sort of have always had this element of their pedigree that they kind of take place on one fateful night, which we very much liked and wanted to continue to play with. And so of that was born this idea of, well, let's put pressure on him by putting a bunch of assassins after him. The tone was sort of inspired by the universe of Arkhamverse in general, and where it sits as some hybrid between the sort of animated series and the Nolan movies. It's not as hyper realistic and grounded as the Nolan movies, but it's certainly not sort of as exaggerated and kind of fantastical as the animated series. It's somewhere sort of in the middle, maybe leaning a little bit towards the Nolanverse in that respect. And in terms of comic books, I think what we drew a lot from was the Legends of the Dark Knight, the sort of late 80s sort of premium format book that, this is Eric Holmes, our creative director, who taught me all of this, but basically it seems that DC saw the success of Batman Year One and kind of recognized, like, oh wow, Batman in his early career is actually something that a whole new generation of readers seem to be interested in. Let's continue to play with this early career space. They created this new format book whereby when a writer and when a creative team signed up and was participating in particularly the early issues of Legends of the Dark Knight, they were telling the first appearances of things. So even though in the regular continuity Joker was breaking out of Arkham Asylum for the 15th time or whatever it was, when Joker appears in the Legends of the Dark Knight series, narratively it's his first appearance with Batman. It's the first time these characters have met. It's his first time poisoning the water or doing whatever it is he's doing in that book. And so there was something really exciting about that idea, and we definitely sort of were inspired by that when we were, and it's one of the major reasons we were drawn towards the early career space.
Another question, I guess, coming from the community as well, is in the previous Arkham games, there was a bit of the balance between going into the normal mode and detective mode was a bit of I guess not an issue per se, but there was people that saying that there's too much time, you have to go into detective mode. Have you balanced that out this time anyhow?
Interesting. We've not changed the formula of detective vision from Arkham City. So you still see the kinds of things that you see in Arkham City. The same sort of things are highlighted and whatnot. So if as a player, you're lost and you don't know where to go, going into detective mode might highlight the grate that you've forgotten to, pull off the wall using your backclaw, much in the same way. I wouldn't say that kind of percentage has changed. What we have done, though, is we have tried to give increasing gameplay and narrative meaning towards the use of detective skills beyond just, I don't know where the next hole is that I'm supposed to climb through. Oh, it's over there. Okay, away I go. And by creating this new case file system that literally has Batman solving crimes, figuring out what happened in a location, why is this body here, who committed the crime, where is that person, setting out, bringing that person to justice in a way that blends interactive narrative and gameplay, all wrapped up in what we think is a kind of cool, Batman fantasy sort of technological aesthetic, was one attempt on our part to try and further reinforce that fantasy of being the world's greatest detective beyond where's the next cookie crumb that I'm supposed to follow.
One last question, just totally unrelated. We ask everyone who we interview this. Do you play first-person shooters?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you go normal or inverted?
I am not an inverted anything anywhere, so I'm a default player, regardless of the platform, whether it be PC gaming, mouse and keyboard, or console. I always play with the default controls.
That's good to hear. Okay. Cheers, Ben. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.